As many of you may know, there's a crisis going on right now in Flint with their water system. My environmental science class thought that this would be a good idea to talk about considering that we live in Michigan. Each group got a question. My question was, what are the levels of lead humans can tolerate? The normal levels of lead in adults is less than 20 micrograms per deciliter or 200 parts per billion. Children is less than 5 micrograms per deciliter and 50 parts per billion. Abnormal levels in children are 10 micrograms per deciliter, and that requires testing. 20 micrograms per deciliter may require treatment, which is like medical treatment, so you would go to a doctor. 45 micrograms per deciliter does require treatment. And then adults, 40 micrograms per deciliter requires treatment, which means like no doubt about it, you have to go to a doctor or a physician. And then 60 micrograms per deciliter requires a higher level of treatment, so maybe like a testing or like something that they can do to test you higher for your levels of blood. Now I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth about the lead levels in children. 0 to 4 micrograms per deciliter is very little lead in the blood. 5 to 9 micrograms per deciliter is a little higher, but this doesn't require any medical treatment yet. 10 to 14 micrograms per deciliter is very high and does require treatment. And again, this is like going to see a doctor or a physician. And then 15 through 44 micrograms per deciliter is quite high, and the doctor should act quickly. And then 45 micrograms per deciliter or higher, medical treatment should be met right away. Like you should go and to a doctor the same day that you find out how much lead is in your body, and they should act quickly and decide on what they want to do from there. In adults, less than 5 micrograms per deciliter, there's no action at all. 5 to 9 micrograms per deciliter, you want to discuss the health risks. 10 to 19 micrograms per deciliter, this means you have to decrease exposure, which means like don't do anything that's going to cause lead to be in your body. Like stay away from the water that is creating the lead and because you don't want to put any more in. And then 20 to 29 micrograms means annual lead exam. So this is like yearly. If you have this amount of blood in your, this amount of lead in your blood, then you would have to get like a yearly exam to see if it's raised or lowered. 30 to 49 micrograms per deciliter is prompt medical evaluation. 50 to 79 micrograms per deciliter is significant symptoms, and then greater than 80 micrograms per deciliter is urgent medical evaluation. So this is the time where the doctor has to evaluate you and decide what course of treatment that they want to take. This next slide talks about the levels of lead in Flint's water. The glass illustrates the 90th percentile reading on the 271 Flint homes that were tested. It's a 27 parts per billion. That's 5 times as high as the level of concern and nearly twice as high as the EPA's, which is the United States Environmental Protection Agency. 1 star equals 1 part per billion. So there's 27 parts per billion in Flint's water. This next slide talks about the highest level found in Virginia Tech's Flint sample. These are the lead levels from the 10% of homes from a sample that had lead levels even higher. This is the highest lead reading from that sample from a home in the city's 8th ward. That's 10 times more the EPA limit. That's 30 times higher than the 5 parts per billion reading that can indicate unsafe lead amounts. And this means that there's 150 parts per billion in this little glass of water right here, and 1 star equals 1 part per billion. And then this map just shows where it is located. If you have any questions at all, these are just the places where we found all of our information. I hope you enjoyed our presentation today.